The Haworth Breck is their newest entry and one of the most affordable options out of any of the major office chair manufacturers. Coming in at a price of $419, it sits comfortably below that $500 threshold, and it's clearly meant to be Haworth's value option, a spot that used to belong to the Haworth Soji. But is this new budget offering actually any good? In this video, I'll be giving you my full in-depth review of the Haworth Breck after testing it for the past month. We'll be looking at factors such as design, materials and build quality, comfort, and overall value to help you decide if this chair is going to be a good fit for you. And just so you know, I bought this chair with my own money. This video is not sponsored, but I will have some affiliate links down in the description below. If you find this video helpful, please consider using these links as it really helps support the channel at no extra cost to you. Now with that out of the way, let's jump right into the review, starting with the design of the chair. Now right off the bat, you'll notice that the Breck has a very sleek and modern look. I really like the colors that Haworth offers for these chairs. Like a lot of Haworth chairs, they're nature inspired, which look great without being too over the top and gaudy. One of the standout design features is obviously going to be the backrest. Haworth calls this their Geo-Stretch backrest, which is essentially a flexible plastic material that's meant to conform to your back. It reminds me a bit of the Herman Miller Mira 2, as well as the Herman Miller sail chairs, which are much more expensive. Personally, I think it looks great. It's super unique and eye-catching, which isn't something you can say about most budget office chairs at this price point. Now, when it comes to materials and build quality, it's important to kind of set your expectations. The Breck is definitely built well for its price range, but it's leaning more towards the budget side rather than the premium in my opinion. It's mostly plastic construction, which feels lightweight, but it still feels pretty sturdy. I haven't noticed any creaking or wobbling, which is a good sign, though I've only used the chair for about a month now. The components all fit together well, so the quality control seems to be decent. One thing I appreciate is that Haworth designed this chair with recycled materials to reduce its carbon footprint. Not like this should heavily influence whether or not you buy the chair or not, it's just kind of a nice touch if you're environmentally conscious. Overall, the build quality is good compared to other budget options, but it's clearly a step down from Haworth's pricier models like the Soji in my opinion. You're kind of getting what you pay for here. It's solid, but not exceptional. It's a solid option under that $500 threshold, but if you want something really well built, then you're going to need to kind of go over that $500 threshold. Now let's talk about the comfort. I like to break this down into three main categories: the seat, the backrest, and the armrests. Starting with the seat, the Breck uses a thin, firm seat pad. It's quite a bit thinner than Haworth's other chairs like the Soji, but in my opinion, it's actually pretty comfortable. It provides good support, and I haven't noticed any bottoming out so far. That said, I am curious as to how it'll hold up over extended use, especially for heavy users. Since the foam padding is so thin, there's a chance that it could bottom out and compress over time. Now, in terms of adjustability, the Breck does have a seat pan adjustment feature, but the overall seat pan is pretty shallow. Even when it's fully extended, the seat doesn't feel that spacious. Because of this, I'd say that this chair is not going to be that great for taller people or if you're someone who likes to sit cross-legged. Now, I'm on the shorter side at 5'6", and I need to keep the seat pan fully extended. I can fit about 3 fingers between the seat pan and the inside of my knee, which is fine for me, but you can imagine that this gap would be much bigger for taller folks. The fabric on the seat is a bit rougher compared to the softer wool-like materials that you'll find on the Soji or Haworth's higher-end models. Now, it's not uncomfortable by any means, but it's noticeably lower quality than the fabric that you'll find on Haworth's higher-end chairs. Overall, the seat is pretty good compared to most other chairs in this price range, but I definitely say that is worse than something like a Haworth Soji. The Breck's backrest is probably one of the most unique things about it. Haworth calls this material their Geo-Stretch backrest. It's made of a thermoplastic elastomer that's flexible and conforms to your spine. I actually find this backrest very comfortable. Unlike most other chairs with plastic backs that I've tried, the Breck's backrest doesn't feel stiff at all. You kind of just sink into it and it feels surprisingly soft for what it is. I don't notice any poking or prodding at all, which is something I usually do notice on other plastic chairs like the Herman Miller Mira 2. Now, one issue that I typically have with mesh backrests is that you can kind of sink through the mesh and feel the hard plastic frame underneath. One advantage to the Geo-Stretch back on the Breck is that you're not going to have to deal with that at all. Since the entire backrest is made from this uniform plastic material, you can sink right in without feeling any frame underneath. This backrest is also very breathable thanks to all the holes and the fact that the plastic won't really absorb your body heat like an upholstered backrest would. So if you're someone who tends to sit hot, then I think this chair might be a good fit for you. That said, the Breck's backrest isn't perfect. The outer frame is pretty rigid, which limits the overall flexibility when you're shifting around in the chair. Also, the backrest doesn't go very high up, so if you're on the taller side, probably 5'10" or over, then you might find the outer frame edges digging into your back a bit. And also, since the backrest is made of plastic, you're not going to get that kind of soft, cozy, hugging feel that you might get from a fabric upholstered backrest. Overall, I really like the backrest on the Breck. It's really comfortable and supportive, but I definitely prefer the feeling of these plastic back chairs for tasking rather than lounging. The lumbar support on the Breck is pretty basic. It's just a piece of plastic with no padding that spans the lower back. It offers some support, but not a ton. And it's only height adjustable with no depth adjustment at all. Adjusting the lumbar support is really clunky. It's not very smooth and tends to catch on either side as you move it up and down. Honestly, it's probably not even necessary since the design of the backrest itself is already supportive enough in my opinion. But I wouldn't say it's uncomfortable by any means, and it comes standard on the chair. It's not a separate add-on like with Haworth's other chairs, so I don't really have any complaints. When it comes to the recline of the Breck, I'd say it feels pretty smooth overall, which is definitely nice. Unlike most Haworth chairs, the Breck uses a weight-activated system with no tilt tension knob. Basically, this system responds to how much weight is being applied to it. It's good in the sense that it's simple to use and doesn't require any setting up, but can lead to an inconsistent experience for different body types depending on how much you weigh. The main downside is that you just don't have as much control over the tilt tension without a dedicated knob to fine-tune it to your preferences. You kind of just need to trust that it'll respond in the way you want it to based on your weight. Now personally, I prefer having a dedicated tilt tension knob. I'm someone who changes my tilt tension pretty often depending on how I'm sitting in the chair. I never really use the tilt limiter or tilt lock function in any of my chairs. I prefer to have the recline fully open and then manually tighten the tension to sit upright or loosen it to recline. This gives you more of a suspended feeling while reclining, which I personally like. But without a dedicated tilt tension knob, you really can't do this on the Breck. And it's a bit of a shame because I really like the way Haworth implements their tilt tension on most of their other chairs. They use a crank system instead of a knob that's really responsive and easy to adjust on the fly. But unfortunately, the Breck doesn't have this feature, so you'll need to rely on the tilt limiter instead to control how far back you recline. Now speaking of tilt limiter, the Breck actually has a tilt limiter function with 4 different backstop positions. This is pretty uncommon on chairs at this price point. Usually you only see this feature reserved for the higher end chairs that cost $1,000 or more. I mean, even the Haworth Soji, which is technically a higher end chair than the Breck, doesn't have a tilt limiter function, so it's a pretty nice inclusion on the Breck. The Breck has 4D adjustable armrests with height, width, depth, and pivot adjustments. Overall, I'd say the adjustment ranges on these armrests are pretty good. I can comfortably use them in various positions with no issues at all. And they go low enough so that I can get them out of the way when I'm not using them. That said, I'm not the biggest fan of the actual adjustment mechanisms. I think the adjustments are just a bit too easy to move, which can lead to accidental bumps. And for the height adjustments, I find that they're just in an awkward spot where you need to really reach to get to them, which is a bit annoying and makes it harder to gauge when both arms are level with each other. One quirk I noticed is that since the arms are connected to the backrest, when you press down on them, it pushes the whole backrest forward. Now, I'm not sure if this is an intended feature or just a byproduct of how they're attached, since the plastic is pretty flexible. I've heard some reviewers say that they actually like this because it kind of puts them in an upright position for tasking, but personally, I'm not the biggest fan. I find that it pushes you forward in the chair, which makes it feel more cramped than it already is in my opinion. This design also just makes the arms feel less sturdy in general, so it might be a bit concerning long term if you're someone who tends to push off the armrest either to get up out of the chair or just to change your sitting position. That said, the one benefit to the armrest being attached to the backrest is that when you recline back in the chair, the arms recline back with you. A lot of chairs have the arms attached to the seat, so when you recline, it creates a big gap between the arms and the backrest. But you're not going to have to deal with that issue on the Breck. As for the arm pads themselves, they're soft and provide good support. They're pretty thin, but have enough softness to them where I can comfortably dig my elbows into them. At first glance, these armrests kind of remind me of the Steelcase Series 1, but they're actually a lot better in my opinion. They're much more comfortable to use, and they have much more generous adjustment ranges. Overall, these armrests are actually pretty good. They're comfortable and have decent adjustability. I say they're definitely some of the better armrests I've seen on a budget chair. So now let's talk about value. The Breck starts at $420 for the basic black on black configuration, going all the way up to $535 depending on the upholstery and frame color you choose. Honestly, I'm not a fan of how much extra they charge for these different color configurations, especially because this chair is supposed to be positioned as a budget conscious option in their lineup. Now, if I was to configure this chair with the color options that I wanted, it would have costed me over $500, which is hard to justify because for that money, you can almost just upgrade to a Haworth Soji. In fact, Haworth often has 15% off sales where you can get the Soji for under $500. In my opinion, the Breck sits kind of in a weird spot in terms of pricing. There's a lot of good $300 chairs out there and a lot of good $500 chairs out there, and the Breck kind of sits right in the middle. It's better than most chairs in the sub $300 category, but not quite as good as many of the $500 chairs like the Soji or even the Eurotech Vera. I think the Breck competes better against the budget $300 chairs because it's better built than most of them and backed by Haworth's 12-year warranty. If Haworth could lower the price to that $300 to $350 price range, I think it'd be an easy recommendation. But at this $420 to $535 price range, I'd probably just spend a little bit more upfront and get a Haworth Soji instead if it's within your budget. One thing to consider is that Crandall Office actually offers an open box returns program where you can get a basically new Soji for about the same price as the Breck. Now these are chairs that were returned to Haworth within their 30-day return window, so it's like a new chair. I think that's definitely something you should think about if you're okay with a chair that's not completely brand new. So ultimately, would I recommend the Haworth Breck? If you're on a tight budget and don't want to spend more than $500, then it's a solid choice provided you fit the chair. It's pretty comfortable, better built than most budget options, and backed by a 12-year warranty from a top office chair brand. My only real gripe with it is that it sits at a really weird price point. It costs significantly more than a $300 budget option, but isn't that much cheaper than the other $500 to $600 options that offer more features and better comfort. My advice: if you can stretch your budget a bit, you might want to consider spending a little bit more upfront and getting something like the Haworth Soji instead. It's a significant step up in terms of comfort and features in my opinion for not that much more money. And if $500 to $600 is out of your budget and you'd be okay with getting something that's not brand new, then Crandall's open box returns program will get you a Soji for about the same price as a Breck. Now with this, you get a better chair, but the trade-off is that you only get a 2-year warranty from Crandall instead of a 12-year warranty from Haworth, and you can't return it. And if both of these options are out of the question for you, then I'd probably recommend the Breck. Again, as a reminder, if you're interested in checking this chair out, I'll have a link to it down in the description. If you found this review helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions about the Breck, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And if you're still undecided on which office chair to get, be sure to check out some of my other comprehensive office chair reviews by clicking here.